Imagine this. You wake up one morning and for a moment, just a moment, something feels different. The usual hum of anxieties, the relentless chase for the next thing, the unshakable weight of unfinished business, all seem to have paused. The silence is unnatural, almost eerie, like a storm that has suddenly ceased without warning. You sit up in bed, waiting for the familiar noise to return, the mental to-do lists, the quiet guilt, the nagging sensation that you are behind in a race you never agreed to run. But nothing comes. You look in the mirror, expecting to see the same tired eyes, the same well-rehearsed expression of someone carrying invisible burdens. But the face staring back at you is unrecognizable. It's not that you look different. It's that, for the first time, you are seeing yourself without the filter of expectation, without the armor of distraction, without the comforting haze of avoidance. And then, the thought arises: who am I when I am no longer running? It's a question you've unconsciously dodged for years, maybe decades. It hides in the background of every impulsive decision, every restless pursuit, every moment of self-sabotage disguised as ambition or self-care. The chase has always been the point, hasn't it? You run towards something: success, love, meaning, or you run away from something: failure, loneliness, regret. But either way, you're running. And now you are standing still. You realize, in this terrifying stillness, that it was never the destination that mattered. It was the motion, the escape, the illusion of progress. Because movement is comforting. It gives the impression of purpose, even if you don't know where you're going. But now, with nowhere left to run, you are confronted with the one thing you've spent a lifetime avoiding: yourself. Why do we fear this moment? Why do we design entire lives to avoid meeting the person we spend every second with? Why do we fill our days with distractions, chasing achievement, pleasure, even suffering, anything to avoid the unbearable weight of simply existing in our own skin? Maybe it's because deep down, we suspect that if we were to stop running, if we were to truly face ourselves, we might not like what we see. Maybe we would see the contradictions, the way we claim to crave freedom but secretly cling to our chains, the way we insist we want love but push it away when it comes too close, the way we construct entire identities out of borrowed beliefs, never questioning if they were truly ours to begin with. Or maybe, just maybe, we fear something even worse: that underneath all the noise, all the striving, all the carefully curated illusions, there is nothing. That without the running, we are no one at all. And so, the great paradox emerges. We spend our lives fleeing from a truth we have never dared to define. But what if you stopped? What if, instead of another distraction, another goal, another excuse to delay the reckoning, you simply stood still? What if, for the first time in your life, you turned to face whatever it is you've been running from? What would you find? Perhaps the answer isn't as simple as we think, because this fear, this endless evasion, isn't just personal. It's not just you. It's woven into the fabric of human existence, buried in philosophy, echoed in the quiet despair of every soul that has ever searched for meaning. And that is where we must go next. To understand why this running exists, not just in you but in all of us. To uncover the forces, both ancient and modern, that keep us moving in circles. To finally pull back the curtain on the hidden mechanisms of the mind, the soul, and society itself. But before we continue, ask yourself, are you truly ready to know? Because once you see it, once you understand what has been driving you all this time, you can never unsee it. There is a reason you run. It is not just a habit or a quirk of personality. It is not simply fear of failure or fear of success, as self-help books like to claim. It is something deeper, older, something that has lived inside humanity for as long as we have been conscious. Think of it like this. The moment you became aware of yourself, you became divided. A split occurred, and suddenly you were both the observer and the observed. You became someone who experiences life and someone who watches themselves experiencing life. This is the birth of self-consciousness, and self-consciousness is a burden. The German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche once said, "To live is to suffer, To survive is to find some meaning in the suffering. But here is the problem. We do not just suffer from pain, we suffer from ourselves. We are trapped in our own minds, burdened by the weight of our choices, haunted by what we could have been. Carl Jung called this the tension between the persona and the shadow. The persona is the mask you wear, the version of you that is acceptable, admired, safe. It is the polished identity you present to the world, the carefully constructed self that allows you to function in society. But behind that mask lurks the shadow, the parts of you that remain hidden, the desires you suppress, the truths you deny. Most people spend their lives running from their shadow, terrified of what they might find if they look too closely. They build careers, relationships, entire belief systems to protect themselves from the uncomfortable reality that there are parts of them they do not control, impulses they do not understand, memories they do not want to relive, truths they would rather forget. And so, the running continues. Jean-Paul Sartre had a word for this: bad faith, the act of deceiving oneself to avoid responsibility. He argued that most people are not truly free because they refuse to confront their own agency. They pretend they have no choice, that they are victims of circumstance, that their lives are dictated by external forces. Why? Because true freedom is terrifying. To be truly free means you are responsible for everything. For your happiness, for your suffering, for your failures, for the meaning you create. There is no script, no divine blueprint ensuring your life unfolds in a particular way. If life has no inherent meaning, then it is up to you to create it. And that realization, that terrifying, liberating truth, is too much for most people to bear. So we run. We run into distractions, endless scrolling, endless entertainment, endless noise. We run into identities, attaching ourselves to labels, ideologies, communities that tell us who we are so we never have to figure it out for ourselves. We run into relationships, seeking validation from others so we don't have to confront the emptiness within. And all the while, we convince ourselves that we are moving forward, that we are growing, evolving, improving. But what if we are not? What if all of this movement is just an elaborate form of avoidance? Arthur Schopenhauer believed that human existence is defined by an endless cycle of desire and dissatisfaction, that as soon as we achieve one goal, another takes its place. This, he argued, is why happiness always feels just out of reach. We are trapped in a state of perpetual longing, believing that fulfillment lies just beyond the next milestone. But what if the thing you are chasing will never be enough? What if the problem was never the destination, but the chase itself? Because here's the truth. The running is not making you free. It is keeping you trapped. And until you stop, until you confront the deeper forces driving you, you will never truly know who you are. And that brings us to the next question, the one most people never dare to ask. What happens if you don't stop? What are the unseen consequences of a life spent running, of never facing yourself, of never standing still? The answers are more disturbing than you might think. You think you are safe in the running. You think movement is proof of progress, that as long as you are chasing, striving, achieving, you are winning. But what if you are not? What if, instead of moving forward, you are running in circles? Consider this. Have you ever noticed how the same patterns keep repeating in your life? The same kind of relationships, the same disappointments, the same struggles, just wearing different faces, different disguises. You change jobs, change cities, change partners, but somehow you always end up back in the same emotional place. Why? Because running does not free you, it binds you. The ancient Greeks had a concept for this, the eternal return, the idea that unless you fundamentally change something within yourself, you will live the same experiences over and over again, as if trapped in an endless loop. Nietzsche expanded on this, proposing a disturbing challenge. If you were forced to relive your life, exactly as it is, for eternity, every mistake, every regret, every moment of avoidance, would you be able to accept it? Would you look at your life and say, yes, I would live this again? Or would you feel a deep, existential terror at the thought? Because if the idea of repeating your life forever horrifies you, then you are already trapped. You are already living a cycle that you do not control. And as long as you keep running, that cycle will never break. But it gets worse. The more you run, the more fragmented you become. Neuroscience tells us that the human brain is wired to avoid pain, both physical and psychological. When we experience something too uncomfortable, failure, rejection, loss, our minds often bury it. It does not disappear, it simply gets pushed into the unconscious, where it continues to shape our choices from the shadows. This is why some people self-sabotage without knowing why. Why some fears feel irrationally strong. Why certain triggers cause overwhelming emotions. It is not random. It is the consequence of avoidance. Carl Jung warned that, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Think about that. What if the obstacles in your life are not external? What if they are patterns your unconscious mind keeps recreating because you refuse to face the real issue? You think you are running toward a better future. But what if you are just running from the past? And this has consequences, not just for you, but for the world around you. When individuals refuse to face themselves, societies become sick. A culture built on avoidance creates people who seek meaning in consumption, in distraction, in outrage. It creates leaders who act out of fear rather than wisdom, who make decisions to maintain illusions rather than confront reality. It creates generations who inherit unresolved traumas, passed down like a curse because no one dared to break the cycle. A world of people running from themselves is a world of people who cannot be still long enough to build something real. And this is the great tragedy. The longer you run, the harder it becomes to stop. Because stopping means reckoning. Stopping means sitting with your regrets, your unfulfilled dreams, your unspoken truths. Stopping means accepting that there is no external savior coming to fix you, no future version of yourself that will magically make everything okay. Stopping means understanding that the only way out has always been in. So, what now? If running is the trap, then what is the escape? The answer is not what you think, and it is not easy. It requires something radical, something most people spend their entire lives avoiding. It requires rebellion, not against the world, but against everything you thought you knew about yourself. And that is where we go next. Rebellion. Not against the system, not against authority, not against the world, against yourself, against every illusion you have constructed to keep yourself comfortable, against every excuse you have made to justify the running, against every belief you have blindly accepted without ever questioning if it was truly yours. Because that is the real prison, not society, not circumstance, not fate. The real prison is the one you have built inside your own mind. And to break free, you must be willing to do what most people never will. You must stop running, completely. This is not passive. This is not surrender. This is an act of war. Think of Siddhartha Gautama, the prince who would become the Buddha. He had everything: wealth, power, pleasure. But the moment he saw suffering, he realized his entire life had been an illusion. So, he walked away. Not toward something, not with a plan, but simply to confront the truth of existence directly. He sat beneath a tree and vowed not to move until he had faced everything within himself, until he understood. And that is where the real battle begins. Not out in the world, but in the silent war within. Step 1. Face the void. Sit in stillness. No distractions, no entertainment, no productivity. Just you, alone, with yourself. Feel the discomfort. Let it rise. Watch as the mind rebels, as the urge to check your phone, turn on music, or reach for something external becomes unbearable. And then, ask yourself, what am I afraid to feel? Because that is what the running has been about all along. not the pursuit of something better, but the avoidance of something unbearable. And when you finally stop running, when you sit in the quiet and let the full weight of yourself crash down upon you, something happens. You see the truth. You see that the fear is not as powerful as you believed, that the pain is not as eternal as it seemed, that behind every avoidance, every distraction, there was only one thing waiting for you: yourself. Step 2. Burn the false identities. Look at every label you have ever attached to yourself, every story you have told about who you are, every belief you have inherited from parents, culture, society, and ask, is this truly mine? Are you the person you chose to be? Or are you simply the result of conditioning? Because freedom is not found in becoming someone new. It is found in stripping away everything you never truly were. Nietzsche called this becoming who you are, not in the sense of discovering a pre-written destiny, but in the sense of tearing down every false version of yourself until only the raw, unfiltered truth remains. And that truth will terrify you, because without the masks, without the stories, without the distractions, who are you? Step 3. Reclaim your power. The final step is the hardest, because once you have seen the truth, once you have faced yourself fully, there are no more excuses. You cannot go back to blaming the past, to hiding behind circumstances, to pretending you are powerless. You see now that you were never powerless, that the chains were imaginary, that the only thing keeping you from becoming who you were meant to be was the illusion that you were not already free. And when you understand that, when you feel it deep in your bones, everything changes. The chase ends, the running stops, and for the first time, you move, not out of fear, not out of avoidance, but because you finally know exactly where you stand, and that is when you are truly dangerous. Because a person who is no longer running is a person who is free. And a person who is free can never be controlled. But before you take that first step, before you step into the world as someone who has stopped running, there is one last truth you must understand. One final revelation that changes everything. And it is the hardest one to accept. And then, it happens. The moment you have been avoiding, the moment you have spent a lifetime running from, the moment you finally understand, you look around, expecting to feel different, expecting some grand transformation, but there is no divine revelation, no sudden fireworks of enlightenment. Just you, standing still, and that is when the truth hits you. There was never anything chasing you. The fear, the pain, the doubt, it was never an external force. It was never some great cosmic burden placed upon you. It was you, always you. Every demon you have battled, every ghost you have feared, every shadow you have fled from, they were all parts of yourself that you refused to accept. And now, standing here, with nowhere left to run, you realize there is nothing to escape. There never was. The pursuit of happiness, the search for meaning, the endless striving to become something, it was all based on a lie. The lie that you were incomplete, that you were broken, that you were missing something essential. But what if you were never broken? What if you were never lost? What if, all along, you were exactly where you needed to be? The final, most powerful realization is this. You were never running toward freedom. You were running from the realization that you were already free. And that changes everything. Because if you were never trapped to begin with, then all of the suffering, all of the struggle, all of the desperate searching, it was all a choice. A choice to believe in the illusion of control. A choice to define yourself by what you lacked. A choice to keep running because stopping meant confronting the terrifying, overwhelming weight of your own existence. And now, that choice is gone. There is no one left to blame, no more stories to tell, no more excuses. Just you and the boundless, terrifying, exhilarating reality of your own freedom. This is why people fear stopping. Because once you stop, you see the truth. There is no grand purpose written in the stars, no external force dictating who you must become. There is only what you choose. You are the writer. You are the architect. You are the only one who decides what comes next. And that is not a burden. That is power. Real power. The kind that cannot be taken, cannot be given, cannot be earned. The kind that was always yours, buried beneath layers of doubt, fear, and illusion. The day you stop running from yourself is not the day you become someone new. It is the day you remember who you have been all along. And so, you take a breath. You step forward, not out of fear, not out of desperation, but because you finally understand. You were never running toward something. You were only ever running away from yourself. And now, at last, you are home.